We're just minutes away from Georgia's Golden Isles, and over the next few days, we'll be able to visit some of those islands and meet some of the people who live there. Downtown Brunswick, and like any Georgia town, it's full of history and culture, and today we were able to explore some of that charm.
My name is Heather Heath. Currently, I'm the Executive Director for Golden Isles Arts and Humanities, and we manage the historic Ritz Theater for the city of Brunswick. We do a lot of theater programs for students and for adults. We still produce plays. Every now and then I'll still be in one, but we have a great time. The theater was built in 1899, right after there was a big flood in downtown Brunswick. It was built as the Brunswick Opera House, although I don't know if any opera was ever performed here ever. It was predominantly vaudeville because there was the old Oglethorpe Hotel across the street, a lot of travelers and visitors, so a lot of different shows came through. But as soon as movies came into existence, they converted this baby to the Ritz Theater. The sign, if you get to see that, is the original sign on the building. It stayed operational as a movie theater until the mid to late 70s. But like most of these kinds of places, when malls and those kinds of things came into being, they declined. It was going to be torn down, and the community as a whole went, no, please do not tear down this historic landmark, this thing, this building that's been part of our lives for so many years. And so the city of Brunswick got together and bought the building and saved it. My organization, Golden Isles Arts and Humanities, took over management in 1989, and we have brought back live performances, we brought back films. We had some great assistance from the Fox Theater Institute in Atlanta to do some restoration work to the exterior of the building. It's got a mix of the original and the movie feel to it, but that was done about 4 years ago, and it's used by the community constantly. It's also used for rentals. A lot of different events happen here. We program a performing arts series, several film series, summer camps, you name it. We're operating 24/7, it feels like. There's a lot of great shops. Probably some of the best restaurants in the whole Golden Isles community here, as we call it, Glenn County, are in this 4 or 5 blocks here. Tipsy McSway's, Southern Table, Basil, these are all significantly upscale and really delicious restaurants. The Farmer and the Larder, Fox's Pizza. I mean, they're all really good and they draw a whole lot of people in. So there's lots of great little stores, great restaurants for people to come in and check it out. Brunswick is the mainland. It's got all these beautiful live oaks, great history, a lot of arts and cultural events that happen here. St. Simon's has got history, the beaches, of course. It's a little bit more people heavy over there, but of course they're drawn to that beauty. Everywhere you look around here, there's something wonderful and beautiful to see, from the people to the buildings to the history to the nature. I mean, I think what's appealing to me is we got it all. So some of those millionaires, they probably did have to stay here. They came down, of course, by train or by boat, and they needed a place to stay before they got ferried over to Jekyll Island, where all their fancy cottages were. So they stayed at the Oglethorpe Hotel, which is catty-corner from the Ritz. Well, it was. It's no longer there. It was torn down for progress. It was an amazing structure. If you see pictures of it, you go, why did they tear that down? But it was progress. It was the late 50s, early 60s. It was one reason probably that the Ritz Theater was saved, because people didn't want to see history be torn down again. It all comes together in just a beautiful and special place to be.
The Sidney Lanier Bridge leads us from Brunswick over to many of Georgia's Golden Isles. We're here on Driftwood Beach on Jekyll Island, Georgia. It's a popular spot for beachgoers to come and soak in Georgia's natural beauty. Driftwood Beach is a popular spot for locals and tourists alike. As you can see behind me, many locals like to come here for fishing, but tourists like to come to soak in the beach sun and to go horseback riding. Why do you like to come to Jekyll Island to go fishing?
Well, I like actually fishing out of my boat, and I love to fish the Jekyll River, but this week we're camping at the campground, and we brought my entire family, so all of us can't fit in the boat, so we fish in the pier today.
Is there anything special about Jekyll Island that you particularly come to the island for?
Camping. My wife and I both retired, and we just love taking the camper and just pulling up into a beautiful campground and parking. If anybody likes to camp, this is where you need to come. Beautiful area.
And what about Jekyll Island makes it beautiful?
The scenery. I mean, the oaks behind us here at Driftwood Beach, beautiful areas. Plus you have summer waves if you're into riding a few slides down. So it's just enjoyable place to be.
And how long have y'all been coming out to Jekyll Island for the week and the weekend?
I'd probably say the last 30 years we've been coming, but I have only been camping the last 2 years.
So Jekyll Island keeps you coming back?
Exactly, keeps coming back, yes.
My name is Captain Eric Moody. I've lived on Jekyll Island for 22 years now. Native of the coast of Georgia, born in Savannah. For the past 11 years, I've been a charter captain here on the island. I do charter fishing, dolphin cruises, sightseeing tours. We'll go down to Little Cumberland, Big Cumberland Island by boat to see the horses if they're out. Jekyll is a wonderful place to live. Just the history, the laid-back atmosphere that's here. You know, we're a small island, we're only about 9 miles long. Very tight-knit community with the people that live here. Everybody's like family. There's plenty to do. We got golf, tennis, of course we got the beaches, that's the main draw here. Miniature golf, bike riding, got 22 miles of bike paths. Jekyll is a great family destination. And the best thing to do on Jekyll that a lot of people like to do is nothing. Just come and sit and relax. That's what you can do.
In the early 1900s, many millionaires came to Georgia's Golden Isle to vacation. Some of these millionaires include J.P. Morgan and Andrew Carnegie.
Jekyll was the winter retreat for the most wealthy elite families in the country in the late 1800s. You had the Morgans, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, Pulitzers, Astors. It's said that at one time in its heyday, over here at the Jekyll Island Club Hotel on Jekyll Island, you could find 1/6 of the world's wealth. I mean, this was the families that built America with railroad, steel, oil, stuff like that. It started off as more of a hunting retreat, and then it started to become fashionable to come down to escape the winters, the cold winters of the Northeast, like Rhode Island, that places. And that's when they built the clubhouse, completed in 1886. Then they added the annex on in 1904, and then they started building cottages around it. So they were only down here for like 3 months out of the year. But like I said, you could find 1/6 of the world's wealth on Jekyll Island, and that's pretty amazing if you think about it. In 1947, the state stepped in and bought the island, bought the whole island, all the historic buildings, everything, $675,000. Wasn't a bad deal. not a bad deal. And that's when they determined to turn it into a state park. And then they passed a law that only 35% of the island can be developed. So, you know, what you see is what you get. And so you got 65% that's still in its natural state, which is a big draw. This area is called the Golden Isles, which is Brunswick, Jekyll, St. Simons, Little St. Simons, Sea Island. Is because of our marsh system out here. We have 1/3 of all salt marsh on the East Coast. And what the best thing about this is in the fall and winter, this marsh goes from green to brown. And what happens is when the sun hits it just right, it lights up to a beautiful gold color. I believe the famous poet Sidney Lanier, his famous poem, The Marshes of Glen, is what he wrote about. And that's the big bridge you come over, that's Sidney Lanier, named after him. But it is beautiful. We're really out here in the wintertime when that whole marsh lights up.
We've seen the beautiful driftwood beaches, we've gotten the lowdown from Captain Moody, and now it's time to head to another one of Georgia's beautiful treasures, St. Simons Island. We're here on St. Simons Island. Georgia's history spans back literally hundreds of years. Today at Fort Frederica, we're going to learn more about James Oglethorpe and how he helped shape this great country.
This was a clear-cut Indian field from the natives who were here before that got depopulated during that unofficial warfare between Charleston and St. Augustine. When the natives who were allies of the Spanish left this area, they go southward, they'd get up and leave. So none of these trees were here because when Oglethorpe arrives, this is a clear-cut Indian field. But what is interesting here is this particular piece of vegetation. It is a 100-year-old grapevine. It is not a tree. So that is obviously from a later period beyond Frederica, more into the future. This was the town moat and wall, and it went a mile around the whole town in circumference. And the first archaeologist was actually pretty good out here. He figured out that the moat was 6 feet deep, 10 feet wide. The dirt dug up from the moat was used to create a 10 feet high wall by 6 feet wide. And on top of that wall, you would have your sharpened palisaded logs on top of that. And if we roll up ahead, there's a little sign. It will show you a little bit about the layout of the wall system here. But these are tabby. You guys know what tabby is made of? Oyster shells, very good. The general method to make tabby has been known for centuries, thousands and thousands of years. It's basically lime, sand, and water, okay? And in the old world, that was done by taking limestone, putting it in a kiln, and burning it down to the lime powder, and you would make plaster and mortar. So the Romans were using it, Egyptians were using it, and then you could add pigment to make your frescoes in the Roman villas and things like that. So this was an old technique, very, very old technique. The question we have here is, how do they know they could do the same thing with oyster shells? We don't know. And I asked my friend Taylor Davis, he owns a consulting firm of historic Brunswick here. He's a preservationist, and he did his dissertation on tabby. And I said, Taylor, how do they figure it out? And he says, the only thing we have is a dispatch from St. Augustine. There was one sentence that said, we have finally perfected the art of making tapia. Okay. We did a lime burn event last November. We're hoping to do it again this year. Basically, you would do huge ricks. It's like a log cabin looking thing, and you had rows and rows of oyster shells, and somehow they figured out you had to have old oyster shells. Oyster shells with salt content did not hold up well. It would rot the tabby. So what do? You go to your local Indian mound. Most of them are Indian middens. They're not burial sites. They're landfills, okay? And they ate a lot of oyster shells over thousands and thousands of years, and they formed this midden, right? And so they literally excavated the shells, and they're nice and clean, and they've had plenty of time to filter out the salt, and they threw them onto these bonfires, and there'd be a pit below it, and the wood ash and the lime from the shells would collapse into the pit, and eventually that would be your quicklime. And it was very acidic and very dangerous to work with. It could take your skin right off if you're not careful. And if you took an equal amount of that lime with water and sand, you had a basic mortar. But you see here, we have a little bit more going on. We have shells. So what they would do is that they wanted to use it like concrete versus mortar or plaster. You would then take it, the slurry, and you break up extra shells into it and use it as aggregate. Okay, but you would never see an exposed wall like that because it absorbs too much moisture. So you would then make a lime plaster with more lime, and then you would cover that over. And you could put colors in that, or you could put clapboards on it, but you would never have an unfinished tabby wall ever seen. Okay, that'd be unfinished. So I'm gonna roll down Broad Street here. They had no church in Frederica. This was the center of society, was at your pub. People left their mail there. Everything happens at the pub. This is where the recruiting sergeant would come to recruit people, get them drunk, take this in on. You're in the Army now. This is the Caldwell House. And like I said, most of the people are living on the edge of society. They're on a sandbar island. They're told, forget being a craftsman, you're a farmer. Yet the Spanish could come and get you. It's not gonna happen. There were a lot of illegal taverns being run out of these houses, anything to make a buck with the soldiers. But this family here kind of made a go at it. Now the archaeologists had a really hard time because of this situation of figuring out who was wealthy and who wasn't. Well, the size of the house helps, the proximity to the fort helps, and also how much brick is in their house. They tried to make brick here. There's no clay in the soil, so every brick you see was made in England, put on ballast on ships, and brought over here to Frederica, and obviously sold. So when you see more brick you see, the more likely it is the person had some money, right? Well, this archway back here, this is the only known personally owned brick oven in the entire town, okay? So the fire would be set on the archway down below, and then you see that circular pattern? That would be a beehive section of brick, and that's where you would bake your bread or your pie or what have you. Nobody else has it in town. That shows that the Caldwells were well done. In fact, it's said in the records that he made the best candles, and they were sold in Charleston and up and down the East Coast. So this guy actually made it. This is what we call the first Union Jack. Prior to Mary Elizabeth dying, Scotland and England were two separate countries. The Scottish flag was a blue flag with the white X on it. That's the cross of St. Andrew, who is the patron saint of Scotland. The British flag was a white flag with the red cross of St. George, you know, the dragon killer, who was the patron saint of England. Those are two separate flags. When Elizabeth dies with no heirs, King James V of Scotland takes over both thrones. So what he does is he combines it into the first Union Jack, Jack being the nickname for James. So they're unionizing Scotland and England at this time period. And this is also called the King's Colors. It's another way of differentiating it. This building is only part of a building. This building, if you look really closely, is only half or less than half of a building actually. You have these two rooms here. This was the entrance to the fort. This is the sally port. And over here you had 2 or 3, 4 more rooms for the officers on duty. So this building went all the way across to there. We call this the King's Magazine. We do have old pictures of it where we almost lost this. The erosion is so much. We had a spur battery shooting out into the river. It's all underwater. The bastion that was there is underwater. This building partly fell in the river in 1903. Locals came and kind of fixed it up. Where the causeway is down there was Gascoigne Bluff. That's where the large ships would port. And to bring supplies up here. Now we're at dead high tide, so this is a little elusive, okay? This doesn't give you the full significance of the death trap here, but any ship trying to make the bend in the curve, trying to swing around to bring its guns to bear, not gonna have a chance. It's gonna get fired on first. Now if you're gonna come over here and check out these cannon barrels, they're really cool. There's some cool iconography on here. You don't usually find this on iron guns. You usually see all the decoration on bronze guns. These are like the cheap pieces. You see the G and the R intertwined here with the crown? There's a G and an R. See the Rex? There's R coming out here. There's the R. And then there's the crown right here. And that's George II's insignia. The maximum range would be about 1 mile. Accurate range, half a mile. And out of these 3 guns, that one we know for sure was here because we found it in the river. These 2 were donated to us in the 50s from Jamaica. when they came up and they saw, oh, you poor guys don't have any guns, so let's donate some guns. And it was from one British colony to another, as they said. And we know these are the proper guns from the period because they have the George II insignia on them. Therefore, they're right time period for the sport. If you're very careful and you look around here, you know, they're just scooping up this big old oyster shell midden, right? Well, guess what? There's not just oyster shells in there, there's all other kinds of garbage like fish bones, deer bones, broken pieces of pottery. So if you're careful and you look around, you might actually find some broken, burnt Indian pottery or deer bones or something sticking out of the wall around here if you know what to look for. You can see here the construction technique. They would build a wooden form, put pegs in it to hold the wooden sides together, pour the concrete in, let it dry, take the pegs out, put the form up to the next level, pour another level. Pour another lever. Then they would do the plastering or whatever exterior thing. So you never see the pour holes normally. You would not leave it like this, but you can see the pour lines on this side really nicely.
We're here at the end of our tour, and as you can see, there's so much rich history here at Fort Frederica. And now we're going to go see the Avenue of the Oaks. These trees behind me make up the Avenue of the Oaks. These oaks date back 160 years and are an important part of a historic St. Simon's Island. In the early 1900s, many millionaires came to Georgia's Golden Isle to vacation. Some of these millionaires include J.P. Morgan and Andrew Carnegie.
Next time on Georgia Detours.
Tybee Island is one of the more developed beaches on Georgia's Golden Coast. It's known for its restaurants, its beaches, and its close proximity to Savannah.
I love the people of Tybee. They're very generous, they're very caring, and they don't care about things that most people seem to care about.
Sapelo Island is one of the more protected islands on the coast of Georgia, and as you can see, its natural beauty has been protected by organizations like the Georgia Department of Natural Resources.